would you care to begin?
Absolutely, I would love to. So, our first guest is Glenda Jordan, who lives in Las Vegas and works full time as an artist, model, and entertainer. She grew up on a farm in south of Nashville, Tennessee, where she was indoctrinated into the Southern Baptist faith from birth. After deconstructing religion in college, she became involved in activism for various causes, joining the third wave intersectional feminist movement. Glenda believes that the liberation from the patriarchy and the destructive influence of misogynistic faiths are inexorably linked. Focusing on atheistic feminism and sex positivity, Glenda is an active volunteer with RfR and other nonprofit organizations and her local queer communities. Other passions include fantasy and sci-fi, Star Trek, art history, traveling, and national parks. When she's not in her studio or doing marathon Zelda gaming sessions, Glenda enjoys spending time with her partners and friends. We also have with us Stephanie today. Stephanie, token ex-Mormon, two-time cancer champion. She makes haikus. So losing faith from a person born into the LDS Church, aka the Mormons, has been compared to a death by 1,000 cuts. Stephanie's family has roots in the early years of the church, and she is one of the few members of her family who has officially removed her name from the church records. Her journey from true blue Mormon to full atheist spans 35 years of small cuts and cracks to her former faith. She has relied on her sense of humor and optimism to make it through.
All right, and I will introduce our third guest who needs no introduction. Gail Jordan, the one and only, is an estate planning attorney and former Southern Baptist who left the faith years ago when her then teenagers, who some of whom we'll be hearing from today, began asking questions she could not answer. Her research led her and her children into the light of reason and rationality. And years later, she still feels the effects, both positive and negative, of that dramatic shift in perspective and attitude. It is this sympathy and compassion that drives her to reach out to help others to navigate the emotional and physical process involved in leaving one's faith. Gail lives in Oregon, where she raises goats and chickens, yes, and is trying her hand at grape growing in her sunny hillside home, affectionately known as Peak Heathen. She blogs about a variety of topics at Happy Healthy Heathen. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited for this panel of folks who have shared their stories with us before, and I am so excited to get you three all in a room together to hear more about it. So, thank you.
We're all very excited to be here.
Yay. Yeah, I cannot wait. So we have a ton of things to talk about. We're talking about breaking free from religion and patriarchy and kind of how those two things can be intertwined and looking at those intersections. And I am so excited for the perspectives that each of you bring to this. But before we start, since it is Women's History Month, let's acknowledge that. And I would love to know if any of you do anything special to commemorate Women's History Month.
I'll start. I like to, so I was an art major and I never officially minored in art history, but I might as well have minored in art history. And on my Facebook for the month, I like to do posts about famous female artists, and I write about who they were and their contributions to art. And some of them are from hundreds of years ago, and others are contemporary. And that's a way that I celebrate Women's History Month.
I repost Glenda's posts.
I love that. Well, amplifying other women's voices is a great way to celebrate Women's History Month. How about you, Steph?
I don't consciously do anything, to be honest. It's one of those newer like holidays. It's also something, oh, this is a thing. I'm still finding out little things like that. So when you guys are like, hey, you want to help us celebrate this thing? Sweet, let's do it.
Oh, that is an
Um,
excellent point. And for anybody that's not familiar with your story, Steph, why is it that this is kind of a new thing for you?
so I'm learning just the Mormon history alone has been taking up most of my exploratory time, uh, which I finally finished every episode of Taken Mormon History. Cannot recommend it strongly. I have some favorite episodes. Uh, if you want the short version, he did like smashed everything into 10 episodes, and you get to the point where Joe dies, which is so cathartic. Anyway, but yeah, it's there just were so many other things that I had to prioritize. Like I'm still touching the surface of deconstruction. So I know about Pride Month, like that was one that I'd learned about, jumped in first. I learned about Black History Month. That's one I started to get a little bit more active when February hit. But that one's only been the last few years that I've been able to give that a bit more attention. Uh, and yeah, outside of that, dealing with cancer stuff, like it's the Mormon stuff has just been kind of like tunnel vision for a lot of it. But the rest of the time, I just am trying to be just me. If like this winter, I went and bought every kind of flannel pattern and color just because it was like, okay, if it's too cold for my porn shoulders, I'm gonna wear the stuff that I wasn't allowed to wear, back then because it was too masculine. So it's great. That's my way.
Amazing. I love that.
Steph, will
I
you,
also, yeah. Oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
will you
please.
explain porn shoulders real quick for people who may not know?
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually going to be a part of the talk I'm giving later on in April, because that has to do with part of purity culture, which is dress codes. Uh, and it's to the point where when you're a teenager, if you're wearing sleeveless, your strap has to be at least 3 fingers thick. So yeah. We would like on purpose. I'm like, what's I don't like the color of my spaghetti straps right now, but the blue, okay, the blue is still less than 3. So I kind of do that on purpose.
Well, you've got spindly little fingers, then you get to have more than
Exactly. Like, you know, that's a little weird. But yeah, point shoulders, the whole idea is and this is why the talk's going to be interesting because the style recently changed. But you've got the magic Mormon underwear. Uh, for women, the sleeve went like roughly there, so your shoulder was totally covered. And if your magic underwear was showing, you were breaking so many laws. Um, and so, yeah, there was a joke that men would become attracted because of your shoulders and give them impure thoughts. And that was one of the reasons that your husband is watching porn and now he's a porn addict. So nice job, porn shoulders.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought that the shoulders were just like it was problematic because it might create lustful thoughts, but man, they took that a step further to,
They
and
did.
somehow we got to this is why they're watching porn.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not even just the women, it's teenagers. Yeah, some men take it so far as young girls like under 10. They,
Gross.
yeah.
oh
So
yeah.
yeah, I cannot wait to get into that later.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
Yeah,
Well, we're
the
gonna
the
get into that.
conversation about clothing specifically for women of what we can and can't wear because
Yeah.
it creates responses in men and their arousal is our responsibility. Oh yeah, that's uh, a lot.
Yeah. Which is really interesting given I know we've talked about this before on the show, but for folks that have read their Bible and are coming from a tradition that uses that as their holy book, I seem to recall some verses about things like if your eye causes you to sin by lusting after someone, you should pluck it out. Now, I am, of course, not advocating that anyone do any such thing, but that is amazing to me that somehow we got from that passage to don't show your shoulders or wear tights at school. I would love for someone to let me know how we made that sound biblical, but you know, doesn't
Because
make
that's
sense.
for a lot of Christianity, and probably if I had to guess, Danielle, I'm probably speaking maybe out of turn, but I'm assuming Judaism as well. It justifies a lot of the roots that old. So yeah, that was a fair trail to get to.
Yeah. Well, we were actually, maybe we should lean a little bit into some more on this topic. We were going to talk about how, we mentioned earlier on in the services that we offer about how we have the online community and we have support groups that are specifically for women, as well as ones that are specifically for men and specifically for queer folks. But speaking to a group of women here, why do you think it's important to have spaces like that? And what are some of the ways that being a woman really shaped your experience specifically with your former faith? And if this is an opportunity to talk about dress codes, feel free to bring that in as well.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'll start. I mean, as again, if you grow up in a patriarchal faith, an Abrahamic faith, Mormonism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, like genders are separated at a very, 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 very young age. You get to be in Sunday school, and then you get to be a mixed gender for a short period of time, and then I mean, I'm trying to think of, I mean, mom might be able to, I can't remember when GAs has even started, like fifth grade, fourth grade, something like that, which for those across the pond, it's, what is that, 8, 9 years old when they start separating gender. And that's when you really start getting the gender lessons of your role, of what little girls are supposed to do, how little girls are supposed to act, what we're supposed to wear, and what we're supposed to not wear. And I know that with the clothing, the ironic thing about we do clothing control because that prevents because we want to prevent the sexualization and sexual lust and sexuality, when it was the sexualization of my childhood body that I wasn't even consenting to, of you have to cover up your body because it's a sexy thing, it's a sexualized thing, and I'm a decade from even hitting puberty. And I just remember that being a really like poignant thing. I know, yes, flashbacks. And then and those spaces then started to get very clear with um it was made clear in my church, especially, Southern Baptist, that your role as women, you were not as spiritual in some way. It could boil down to, you were not as spiritually significant as men. You're not allowed to lead prayer during the service. You're not allowed to be in a position higher than a man. And every year that you get older, these roles become more and more intense and clear.
And Kara, it's my experience. I don't know if it's anybody else's. As I hear Glenda retelling it, and we're kind of reliving it. What was true in my case, when I was on this side of it, I look back and I see all of that in clear definition. When I was inside of it, I was not picking up on it, not because I didn't see it, not because I didn't see, yes, we're segregating the children, yes, we're putting this on the little girls to wear this, but because I was buying into it. And so because I was buying into it, it was just I never questioned it. I never thought, boy, that's an unfair thing to do, to put this on the little girls. And I didn't, and I was not a stupid person, but because I bought into it, into the theology of it, I didn't spend any time reflecting on it. It's taken me years, as Stephanie described, process it and to go, oh no, that was definition of the indoctrination. We just accept it from such an early age that even if those questions arrive, that your religious tradition has armored itself against those doubts and questions with the prepared answers. You already know, if you do question it, it's because God's ways are higher than our ways. There are things that we're not going to understand. And so you hit the wall before you ever even get to the wall. So it is both a source of pride and embarrassment for me that it was Glenda who has helped me recognize and unpack and deal with some of those things, because I was in it for a great many more years than she was. Different era, different outside influences, all of the reasons. But for me, it wasn't it wasn't a struggle on the inside. It wasn't a struggle until I reached the belief point, which I thought was only about the supernatural belief. And then once I got through that and started looking in retrospect, it was so much more than that.
Yeah, and I love the fact that both of you are here on this panel with us. We kind of talked about that before the show. How interesting that is to see kind of the generational difference in your experience of that same faith tradition and how maybe prevailing social attitudes were changing at a little bit faster rate than what the doctrine inside the church was. And I wonder what impact that had on both of your experiences and maybe on Glenda's faster sort of recognition of some things that she didn't recognize as reflecting her views on what equitable treatment
I
might
think
look
that
like.
I clearly that was a different time. I remember when the children, and most people know my personal story, but my children, I have 4 children, real close in age. And so they all sort of went through their adolescence together and went through their questioning. And I remember the significance of, they were in a little county junior high up through 8th grade, middle school, all the way. And then when they got to high school, it was still rural. It was still Tennessee. It was still, kind of backwoods, but it was a little bit more exposure. And they had 2 sisters who are of the Muslim faith, and they were those very devoted Muslim girls. And it was that experience that brought my girls to me. And they said to me, they say the same thing about their faith as we do ours. They are just as committed. They read the book, they do the rules, and that itself was massive exposure to Glenda that I would never have had in my youth. And it was a significant experience for
Oh
them.
yeah. And that was I mean, I had already kind of gotten rid of my belief in hell, but I still was a believer, but I just knew it's like, it is insane to think that this person that I'm friends with, that I go to school with, who has, again, just as much belief in their ideology, has just as much thousands of years of history or whatever as my faith, that like, oh no, but they got the wrong one. That was insane to me at the time. And again, increasing just the insufferable bullshit of feeling of the lesson, the ideology of you are lesser, you are meant to be subjugated, you have to be subservient. And I don't know if y'all can tell, I'm not what you would call a meek or quiet person. I am an aggressive, raging asshole. And so I did not take that very well. I didn't. I put, pushing back in the church with that bullshit from a very early age of like, like that I am not lesser than men. I'm just not. Y'all are fucking wrong. I'm like, you're wrong. I'm not. You're wrong. I don't believe in this misogyny.
I love that because my next question was going to be if your former faith did emphasize this kind of male leadership and dominance over women, which I think we've heard from everyone here that it did. I was wondering if that impacted your decision to leave the faith, and I'm hearing that may have definitely been a catalyst for Glenda.
Mine, it absolutely did.
Yeah.
I I'm trying to remember when I did my first RfRx talk, because chemo brain and I have a lot of memories gone, so this might have happened. Um, but one of the biggest catalysts that caused major cracks, it wasn't okay, I'm done, I'm officially leaving. It was one of the ones where I'm done attending, I am furious, I don't want to associate with it right now. Um, but there was absolutely a point where I convinced myself I was able to go back. I was worthy of going back. Uh, I might not have been worthy to go to the temple or anything like that, but I could at least, take the sacrament. I could attend the meetings. I could be a part of it again. Uh, and then I started to realize that the whole system, when it came to the priesthood, was one of the major dividers. And I don't know why I didn't realize that when I was a teenager, why that was a big deal. Um, and so, again, you've got the multiple bricks that you start when you're little, the line upon line, precept on precept line, so to the point where you're building this entire thing. And some of them are built so early that they're so compacted, they take a lot more to figure out. But there was this moment that it really started to open my eyes. Uh, and part of the problem was I didn't attend the women's only uh, meeting after sacrament meeting. I attended the teenager one, where all the teenage girls would go their separate groups, and I loved that most of the time. um, but when suddenly, about 10 years later or so, not even 10 years, but I started attending the women's only again. And at the same time was also attending the group where it is mixed. It's the men and the women Sunday school class. And I started to figure out with these challenges uh, how long the women would answer a question in Sunday school, like how much time they would take on a question. How often would the women speak up compared to the men? I just, out of curiosity, because, data, and it's the journalist side of me. And I've seen a spreadsheet. It's hard. And these are not, people who've been there that are just new and are used to the culture. These are women who are much older. They're my grandma's age. It's heartbreaking because they're so used to it that they're either hiding it very well or they're very accepting it. And so yeah, when I did speak up in those, I caused a stir to a point where once I got called into the bishop's office at the end of
Atta girl.
church. It's great.
Oh, wow. Is that like
Um,
being called into the principal's office
Pretty
at school?
much.
Like, what
Yeah.
happens when you get called to the bishop's office?
I felt justified in what I was asking. Because it also dovetailed with the LGBT support that I was trying to give to youth in my area. It also dovetailed with the time that I found out there was uh, a whole group of people. I honestly haven't looked as I'm pretty sure they're still around, but it's a group of people that are LGBTQ plus that are Mormon, have been Mormon, or they are Mormon with LGBT family members, just this whole intersection. And I become involved with that group. And so everything was going together, the LGBT things, uh, the idea of feminism and if it has a place, understanding finally that, wait a minute, we're not talking about Heavenly Mother, even though one of our most common songs that we sing in Sunday, like in sacrament meeting itself, one of the final verses says, if I have a Heavenly Father, which is what we call God. It's weird when you have someone say, God said this to us. It's usually Heavenly Father. So when you've got the verse in this song that says, it makes sense reasonably, I have a Heavenly Father, so of course I have a Heavenly Mother there too. But you can't talk about her. You get in trouble for bringing her up. And when you factor in polygamy, there's a reason for that. Because they don't want you to question why we don't talk about her. Because then if you find out, then there's that's another part of the threads that causes some of those bricks to fall down. But the big moment uh, when I was 2013, 2014, 2015, trying to keep going, uh, the ordained women movement started in March 2013. It was founded by Kate Kelly. She's a human rights attorney, and at that time, a devout member of the LDS Church. Uh, I vocally supported ordained women. My efforts were primarily on LGBT issues. Uh, but what drew me to it, I grew up in a family that didn't have easy access to the priesthood in our household. And so the idea that women could also have and use the priesthood was easy for me to support. It was a no-brainer. So ordained women brought the disparity between men and women and their role in the church to the forefront for me personally. And that's when I tried that challenge to track the amount of time women and men spoke up in Sunday school classes. Then in, what was that, a little over a year later, June 2014, Kate's former bishop, way over in Virginia, started the excommunication process while Kate was in Utah. Again, her local Utah bishop should be the one that does that. But this guy across the other side of the country felt that he had the right and power to do it himself. So, what this meant was she was expected to show up in Virginia to a disciplinary hearing where the outcome had already been decided.
Of course
Instead,
it had.
she chose to attend a vigil in Salt Lake for ordained women and their supporters. Kate was the face of the group, and so she was the one publicly punished. There were others who also faced some form of punishment up to excommunication for having their names as supporters or also running the movement. And I was not the only one afraid and confused by her excommunication. So Kate was a strong enough believer in the doctrine of the church, and she was pushing to bring back priesthood to the women that was around back when Joseph Smith was alive. And I was struggling to hold on to my testimony. So, what chance did someone like me have in a church where Kate wasn't good enough? So, her excommunication, like I said, was one of the huge, massive, something's not right moments. Um, and also, when it comes to Mormonism, when you're born into it, you're depending on what they put on your birth certificate, your path is set. Uh, Male and female, and of course it's the Mormon church, so they don't identify anything as in between, um, which is a whole other problem. So yeah, it was very much I was going to be in the young women's group when I became a teenager. I was going to be waiting for a missionary to get back home, and I was going to marry him. If it was a guy that I fell in love with when we were teenagers, that was the path. Uh, and I was going to be a mom to 3 to 7 children, um, which is a pattern that my own family was continuing. And it just was going to be, and then of course, once they're born, their paths were set. And I just, I'm really grateful that jumping out of state and going to school in Arizona derailed so much of that for me because I was so focused on survival mode for about 3 years. There were Mormon churches out in like Gilbert, I'm sure somewhere in Phoenix, somewhere in Tempe, but they were not my focus. Surviving in school were got all my attention. So just
Yeah.
like a lot of people are getting a break to breathe because of the pandemic, I got that a bit earlier.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up too, and kind of reflects some of the things that people have been talking about in the chat too while you're speaking. There are several people talking about, for men as well, they didn't feel an option to resist some of these expectations, and I wonder if it may be that people are simply trying to survive in a sense within that community by not making big waves and seeing, like, to your point, especially in the Mormon tradition, seeing people experience being cut off completely. That is terrifying. That's like a type of social death that most people would want to do anything to avoid. So definitely don't want to express judgment towards people who did, get indoctrinated into this and didn't immediately question it. There are a lot of reasons why people might not have thought to do that or might not have felt safe doing that. So thank you for reminding us about that.
Steph, I love that you brought that up because, I've shared this story a little bit before, but to make it really clear on the most powerful moment of misogyny that I experienced in the faith, that was probably the biggest crack for me. of getting me out of the faith. And it was, and when I say it was a powerful thing, like I literally, I'm not kidding. I gave my father, who I love very much and is a wonderful man, I gave my father the silent treatment for like over a week where I literally did not acknowledge his existence. I didn't talk to him. I didn't look at him. It was a really dramatic, tense moment. And I want to say I was like freshman in high school or eighth grade or something. And it was about, I was, of course, very dedicated to the faith, was extremely religious, and it was the realization, like, if I wanted, I'm a extroverted, articulate, charismatic person. I knew I would be good as a missionary. I knew I would be good as a leader. I have the ability to reach people, to speak to people, and I just blatantly asked the question, like, if I wanted to lead a service, if I wanted to lead a service or be a leader as a missionary or a leader in the church, you're telling me that because I'm a woman, I was assigned female at birth, even though my male peers are way less dedicated to the faith than me, like I would not be allowed to do that. That even though, because again, this was a logic problem for me, the most important thing to do as a Christian is what? As an evangelical Christian, what is the most important thing you can do on this earth?
Is it convert more people or submit?
It's converting more people. And if I can save one more soul from the eternal fires of hell, then that's the most important, because this life doesn't matter. It's about the eternal life. And if I can save one more person, why you're telling me that the sexism is more important to uphold than saving people from eternal, that's what you're telling me, that that's more important as an ideology to uphold. And the answer was, yep, yes, it's more important that you stay subservient. That is what God, them's the rules. And I just like, it was so, the amount of sitting and swallowing your rage as a woman in the pews, just silently seething.
Oh,
I'm glad you brought that up, Steph, because the leadership position, especially, of it's just made very clear that is not what you are allowed to do.
yeah, that angered me a lot as well.
Yeah.
And y'all know I can't fix my face that well. That was a struggle. Well, I would love to hear also from Gail on this topic as someone who had a little more time in this environment um, before were induced to check out from it. Were there ways that you noticed either yourself or other people kind of trying to reframe or kind of resist some of these more misogynistic and kind of patriarchal traditions to kind of get by and make it consistent with your values and your own self-worth as a person?
Yes, and within the Southern Baptist Convention, I knew there were more progressive churches. I knew that there was I knew there was wiggle room for interpretation. However, I had Glenda's dad on one side. I knew I had to manage that. I knew there was only going to be so far I could push him. And we were from a small town, and I knew that there wasn't going to be a progressive church in that town. We would have to go down to Nashville, an hour's drive, whatever. So my intellectual mind knew that. And I thought, well, but we've chosen this church that is not that way. So we have to live within those parameters. And I was not trying to be subversive. I was trying to, as Glenda said, I was trying to do what I was supposed to do, which is lead other people to Christ, to, show this plan of salvation. And I was always willing to teach Sunday school. Well, in my church, in our tradition, women can't teach men. Well, our college boys, men, because that's where there was this big gap. And so they needed a teacher. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that. Well, they had to convene this deacons meeting because our college boys men, because if college boys are men, then I can't teach the class. If college boys are boys, I can teach the class. Is it? And this group of deacons that I had to go sit in the room and talk to them, and then so I got to go sit in the room and present my case. And did God call me to do this? Well, yes. And I'm having to answer all their questions. But then when it was time for discussion, you are excused. And so I've done this whole thing about presenting why I feel compelled to teach and why, and I was not arguing the point. I was not arguing the point of whether or not boys, college age men were men or boys. I wasn't going to argue that point. All I was saying was I have this skill set. I feel compelled to teach. It looks like it matches the need in our church for needing a teacher. And so I was presenting it with my little practical brain on, what might happen. And then when I had left, and then they had to, oh God, they went for 2 hours debating and discussing. And of course, my then husband at the time was in that room. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And it went into theology and this and that. And I'm just, I won. I mean, they let me teach the college boys, men, people, whatever they were. It was mixed class. It was mixed. I had men and women, and women were okay because that was not what the rule said. The rule was women couldn't teach men. Anyway, it at the time it was a big deal and it was subversive. And there were people that were put out with me because I've caused this upheaval and this uproar. And it's like, I'm just trying to teach Sunday school. I'm just trying to do what God tells me to do. So I looked at the time. At the time, I was not trying to disrupt it. Oh man, if I could go back and do it again, absolutely turned the screw. But at the time, no, I was trying to, I was trying, as the girls have said, as Stephanie and Glenda said, we were trying to do the thing that you've told us to do, that you've impelled us to do all of these years, is to do this thing. So,
And again, with Gail, mom's position, that it was a role that needed to be fulfilled. There was not a male figure fulfilling the role. Therefore, I would like to do this role. No, like, so then again, you were prioritizing the sexism over the impact of spreading the word of God.
Right. That's what always got me too when they would get into these debates about things. It was always about the minutia of, well, the doctrine is this, and are we theologically correct in saying this? And I'm like, y'all are missing the forest for the trees. You need a Sunday school teacher and you have one. Why is this a debate? But
It's also priming you, like, when you're sitting there and of all the Olympian mental gymnastics that happen of you, oh well, men are men that's in this role and women are in this role, and the minutia of this verse and this verse. It's like, if we're gonna play this game, I'm gonna be the champion at it. And so it's because, remember, we don't let people who are super sinful to be in positions of leadership. And I happen to know that this fucker over here has had an affair on his wife. So why is he allowed to be in a position when I, who've goody two shoes, can't, like, explain that to me. Explain that to me. Like, why, again, we're gonna, the shittiest dude is gonna have a higher spiritual position than the most pious woman in the church. And that was enraging to a level, because again, compared to the youth that I was in, like, I wasn't having sex, I wasn't listening to rap music, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was winning Bible, I was crushing Bible drill competitions. So it was, sorry, my Zoom reaction. So I was crushing Bible drill competitions. So it was utter bullshit. But again, I was still meant to be subservient compared to my male peers who were not as dedicated to the faith.
it's those porn shoulders, Glenda.
Oh my God, don't even get me started on the harrowing. Like, if you think about, like, any good, great show that's about how awkward adolescence is and youth is, the harrowing journey of when you're in puberty and you're having to, like, find swimsuits when you're almost 6 feet tall in high school that, like, fit your body, and, like, but you don't have any boobs yet, so you got to, like, find swimsuits that, like, can cover yourself, because you're not allowed to wear a two-piece swimsuit on the youth trip, and, like, boys can be shirtless, and that's not, but mom and I had we there was a funny, I mean, it's funny to me now, but a memory of, it was a youth trip it was a beach trip that we would do. And again, the struggle to find a swimsuit that I could wear because I was almost 6 feet tall, by the time I was in high school, but I didn't really hit puberty and like grow breasts until later. So I was super flat chested. And we were sitting in a dorm room at this youth trip, and mom took scissors and cut out the boob cups on the only one piece swimsuit that we managed to find that could fit me, so it wouldn't be this really awkward thing. It's just a cherished memory of mine, mom.
Oh, I remember the swimsuit struggles. We,
Yes,
we had
yes,
the
yes.
I went with the tankini and
Oh
boy
yeah, the
shorts
tankini.
combo. That was big in the 90s. Like most normal people would have like the tank with the bikini bottoms or the boy shorts with the bikini top, but if you put the tank with the shorts, you were pretty much just in a tube that covered your body, and that
Which
Oh,
was okay.
and it
I
also
hate.
depends on the way that the tankini was built, because
Hmm.
if they were the really cutish one, and again, I'm only saying cute based on my mom's sense of style, because mine is not feminine almost at all. In fact, I got pictures I'm gonna bring for the one in April. It's great. Um, but yeah, if you wanted the really cute one that had like, kind of a flowy sort of thing, and you jump in the water, now it's up. Now you've got like the very, very fake bra that is usually sheer, and now it defeats the whole purpose. And I couldn't wear those because I was on swim team, I was always in the water. Ever since I was little, 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 if there was water, I'd be in it. Didn't matter if it was gross. So yeah, I wanted to dive in head first when I got to the pool, and you can't do that
Can't
with
do
those
that.
stupid
Mhm.
tankinis. And so
No,
I can't wear a bikini, and so I always had to go with a one piece.
yeah. Which
And
I
there's a
don't know
re
how those are more modest. It's skin tight. I don't know. The logic just isn't there.
I
I
know.
And again, this is like
Oh,
all
oh,
happening before I'm even sexually active or before I even consider myself like that much of a sexual person. So there's a disconnect between what's being put on me as ideology versus how my internal reflection of how I feel about myself. And there's a reason why, and I know I'm not the only one, that I find a lot of empowerment now, and I really enjoy, also because it's a sensory issue, not wearing a lot of clothes. I live in the desert and I love dressing like a slut. I love wearing tiny little crop tops and little hoochie shorts and not much else. And I find empowerment in that because I'm not going to cover up myself. Like in the winter, it's different. I'm in my gremlin like hoodies. But yeah, I don't like wearing a lot of clothes. And a lot of it has to do with like I get to have my body however I want, and I don't have to cover it. If that's on you, if you have issues with it, that is your fucking problem and not mine.
pluck out your own eyeball.
Yeah, pluck out your own eyeball. Go away. First of all, you're welcome. Second of all, go away.
Yes. Well, and okay, that is a great segue into another thing I wanted to ask. We kind of talked about how there were a lot of reasons why it would be difficult to speak out against some of these rules that are misogynistic, while you're within the faith. But since the three of you have left, I would love to know your favorite ways to kind of subvert, or shall we say smash, the patriarchy now that you're not necessarily in that community anymore.
okay. So, of course, one of the things that I was told my path was becoming a mother, right? Um, well, with my family being, something straight out of Jerry Springer, I never felt like I was going to be a good mom. So I didn't want to have kids. And one of my rules when it came to who I was going to date, one of the four was they cannot already have kids, because I don't think I could be a good stepmom either. Well, my
But could
husband
you
ended
be an
up,
evil stepmom?
I could probably be a really bad evil stepmom, which might be where I'm at. I don't know. I'm still working on that right now. I'm getting better at it. But that's the funny part. One of the things that happened with the guy I'm currently married with, he broke three out of the four rules, and he came with kids, and they were little. So it kind of made me nervous. But I've tried to build enough of a situation where I can be someone they can talk with about anything. Uh, and I wanted to do that not just for like secular conversations, but also because they their mom is still very active in the Mormon church, uh, and they have to go to church every Sunday.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
yeah, I knew the path that they were going to be put on. I knew the pressure that they were going to be facing in not that long of time. Uh, and I'm not doing it to be, the I'm gonna break these boys and get them away from like all of that. No, I wanted to be someone that they can have open conversations
Mhm.
about the environment, the religion, and everything that they're growing up in. So now they're to the point where they both are given the priesthood. They're 11, coming up on 13 for the oldest, which is really funny, uh, because the oldest especially is one of those like pretty sarcastic, loves to kind of push boundaries a bit, clone of his dad. It's funny. Um, so first thing I told him was, yes, you have power according to the religion you are in. However, if I hear you start to lord that over your mom, you and I are going to have some words, sir. And had kind of the same conversation with the youngest one. Like, don't do that to your mom. Just because you have more power according to the other people in your religion, you do not. You are not over her. You are not yet even her equal. You got some learning to do. You you do not get to do that to anybody just because you are suddenly given this thing. So that's that's one piece of it. And I've also tried to find really messed up topics that come out of the twice a year conferences, uh, and kind of sit down with them and go, hey, let me make sure that you are aware of this thing that is now being taught. How do you feel about that? Here's how it was when I was growing up. And we hash it out. So it's it's kind of like back when I was still active in the church and still trying to be one of the people who's changing it from the inside. But I now feel like I have a different kind of power over it because I'm no longer trying to fit in those boxes myself. So I can get out of that part of it and I can just kind of help still be a way to change it from the inside, but in a more immediate way. And it helps. I don't bring up with everything with them. But there are times where one of them is like, yeah, that's messed up. Why am I still doing that? And it's great. Uh,
What we call that is, it's, to use the phrase, doing the Lord's work. But it's true. Like, actually, that's I mean, you are providing an influence for the people who are going to be in these positions of power, and that's like one of the most important things you can do with subverting the patriarchy. I enjoy subverting the patriarchy by doing whatever the fuck I want anytime I want to. I got sterilized last year, so no children from me, so I don't have to do that. I have as much sex as I want to with as many people as I want to. I have my own harem of boyfriends. The scandal. I like that's I do that all. I remain loud and obnoxious and take up space and demand to be heard, and do whatever I want, especially on Sundays. And that is my and I want to pass it on to Gail for like our Sunday of like every Sunday we get to do something that's not church. That's us subverting that's subverting the patriarchy. No, I'm not gonna sit in a pew and serve men. No.
And I
that
think that,
actually
I think
made me
that,
think with your little harem, just a heads up, you are doing Emma's work because she was sick of Joe hiding all of these women and said, fine, if you're going to do this, I want one.
Yeah.
And he took it back. Like he said, nope, was crossing my fingers. You don't get to have him. And yeah, so you're continuing that with so kudos.
Linda and I both live pretty out loud on our social media, and I'm maybe speaking for her, and she can follow up. It's equal parts the joy with which we live our lives. All of this is all about the light and air and space that's on this side of that decision from walking away from religion. And when she posts about her parties or her art or the clothes she wears or the things that she does or who she sees and what she does, a lot of it is born right, fully half of it is born out of the joy that she's experiencing. Me too. Half of it is also recognizing that when we were in church, we were a big deal. And when we left, it was seismic for that community. We know that we still have impact on people. There are people to this day who go through the cycle and reach out to us and say, you had such an impact on me. And I remember a conversation we had, and Glenda and I are like, no idea what that conversation was. I have no idea. It was just one of a bajillion conversations I had about it, who have come full cycle and said, I think I'm doubting. And what do I do? And of course, I direct everybody to recovering from religion, but fully half of the joy that we experience in showing people how you can live a happy, healthy, productive life post-religion is that there are people who are watching and listening and paying attention. Maybe not the people that we knew directly, but the friends of the friends. You know how you do that on social media. When you engage with somebody, it's not that's not the point. The point is the peripheral stuff where people are listening and paying attention and they're getting something from it. So with an eye toward that, I think Glenn and I both live our lives that way, out loud, out very loud because of that, because we know that we are still 25 years later, however long it's been since we separated from our faith, who are paying attention and are still watching us. We still have old church friends in our feed. Now, there are some of them are on the hard right, and that's awesome. That's fine if we can tolerate it for long enough. But there are people who are friends of friends that see what we do. And that's kind of a cosmic obligation that we're going to post this and we're going to live this way. And also because we're trying to make a point that you can lead a moral, happy, responsible life outside of religion, because so much of that pushback is about that. So, that's part of it, I think.
I love that you're pushing back by being happy and healthy and well adjusted.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, we're having a really good time over here,
Yes,
not
we are. Yes,
dealing
we
with
are.
any of this nonsense.
No, we're
I
Um,
think
secretly really miserable and sad, which again, remember when you're in the church, you're told as a woman, if you don't do all of those things, you are going to live a sad, hollow, miserable, empty life if you don't let a man, tell you what to do.
one of the ways that I I get a kick out of doing it, but when you're of course told that you don't have the priesthood power, that you only have the priesthood power through your husband, and that of course is given to your whole family, and that's how you have the priesthood power. But no, you don't, because you can't give a child your blessing. He has to do it. So I always hated that line. But still, even when I hated that line, I was like, okay, but eventually I'm going to have a husband, I'll be fine. Uh, so lately, I know how much a bunch of these grifter men love to trash talk these movies based on the trailer alone. They don't even bother to see the movie, and all they do is go off on, oh, women, oh, it's only women, oh, it's only women power,
As a
and it's a
woman, it's
garbage
woke.
movie.
It's like,
Yes. Oh, I hate them. But all on purpose, go and see these movies. I will pay money to see these movies. If they're bad, great. I have fun watching them. And to me, the first time I did it, it was so, I still remember the feeling. We went and saw Birds of Prey, the Harley Quinn one. And I came out of that movie and I was just like, so much like electricity running through me. And I was bouncing around. And I turned to my husband and I'm like, is this what it's like for you every time you leave an action movie with a bunch of dudes? Like, is you go through this every time? And because that was the first time I saw that. Uh, so the again, the one with the Marvels, you get all three of these women. And a lot of people trash talk this movie. I had a blast. It was so cool, especially the scene where they're like learning how to play and train off of each other and
That's
get into a
also,
rhythm.
Steph, that's the concept of maybe, my darlings, come here, come listen to me. Maybe not everything is for you. Maybe something that's made is for somebody else. Maybe like Black Panther wasn't made entirely for just white audience. Maybe something isn't about you. And if the patriarchy is about centering men, when men experience not being centered, the apoplectic rage it sends them into, that they have to hold a little deacons meeting of well, can we allow Gail Jordan to teach a boys class? Because like when men aren't being centered, they can have a pretty negative reaction. And then we get to sit there and told that women are the ones who are more emotional.
Right?
Yeah. I had a seminar in grad school about I don't remember what it was. It was a class about feminism basically, which I'm sure by itself would have enraged some people. Actually, that did enrage some people, I know. But my favorite quote from the class was, "Hey, y'all know that anger is an emotion, right?" Like, yes. That counts as being emotional. So let's not say that men don't have feelings. Everyone has feelings and they're valid and it's okay to have them, but you are not the main character. Just FYI. Okay. um, okay, I want to talk about, we've kind of like talked around this a little bit, but we have to be sure and get to this topic. We still have plenty of time, but so we've heard from women on RfRx previously, like our friend Janice Selby from Divorcing Religion, about how sometimes leaving a patriarchal religious community can coincide with leaving patriarchal personal relationships or marriages or family situations. And I would love to hear from y'all if your views on interpersonal or romantic relationships changed at around the time you were leaving religion, and did your sex life improve post religion?
I'm gonna go ahead and make mom start this because I know you're gonna have the best shit to say.
Yes, Gail, tell us everything that you want to tell the internet.
Especially the sex life
Right.
part.
Share this part. I don't see how anybody leaves religion and those things don't happen for them, because all of this indoctrination and all the patriarchy, you don't put it in boxes and go, well, it applies to the social hierarchy, it applies to the roles in church, but in the bedroom, whatever, just have a, have a grand old time and do whatever you want and role play and use language, and all of those things are affected by the rules. All of those things are affected by the demeanor women are supposed to have, the enjoyment women are supposed to have, the control, the being in charge, all of those things. And when you think about a satisfying sexual life, it all comes into play. And so I think, Kara, my answer is almost, it would be the rare exception that someone doesn't have that alternate experience after walking away from a patriarchal controlling religion as a woman. You come, Seth Andrews did a video for me several years ago, and I accidentally said it. I talked about how on this side of that decision, there's so much more light and air and space. And so it got named, and it's kind of my thing that I say, there's so much more light and air and space in all spaces, in your social life, in your sexual life. So many of us, because we were conforming to all those rules all that time, didn't even have the opportunity to figure out who we were and what we liked sexually, because you never had that experimental time. You never had the ability to do that. You were conforming from such a young age, from before you were a sexual being, through being a sexual being, and then you just didn't have the opportunity. And when the walls of my cell vanished and you fearlessly, boldlessly face all worlds about what what the opportunities are and what you can be and what is it that you like. I have a friend, a dear friend, who's part of RfR, who has come away from the Jehovah's Witness faith. And one of the things that she says from childhood, she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she said, I never spent a moment thinking about what I wanted sexually, ever, ever. I didn't think about it. I didn't have the opportunity. It wasn't going to be relevant. So, and since leaving the religion, of course, now she's experimenting and feeling all the things and having all the experiences. And boy, to to go through that when our sexuality is such a massive part about being a human being. I think, we talk about it a lot here at RfR. We talk about sex a lot at RfR because it's such a big deal. But I'm telling you, it's as big a deal as all that and more for women who have come through the whole religious process and who haven't had that experimental part. It was part of my story. It was part of Glenda's story. It's part of almost every story that we hear about women when we come out of these controlling patriarchal religions.
That is so well said. And yeah, a lot of times people do, not a lot of times, but on occasion people have asked like, oh, y'all talk about sex a lot. Why is that? Well, first of all, it's because Dr. Ray shares with us his PowerPoints with duck penises all the time. But it's also because that is one of the main, if I don't think it's the number one, I think it's the number two thing that people call the helpline about, is something to do with this topic of sex and relationships after religion. It's a big deal. And yeah, this reminds me of what Gail, what you were sharing reminds me of a book I read one time in a feminist book club called Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but in this book, they interviewed a bunch of women in kind of like Eastern European countries about their experiences with sex and relationships under socialism and other systems. And one of the themes that came up a lot was women saying, well, once we were in these more secular situations where we didn't have these traditional, very patriarchal roles thrust upon us, all of a sudden our partners had to care about what we liked and if we were having a good time and enjoying ourselves. And turns out that worked out a lot better for us. Like, wow, this isn't rocket science, folks.
Yeah, I've spoken about it before. I've given a talk about polyamory before, and there's a lot of comments in the chat about like sex work and sexuality, which is such a huge thing, and I want to talk about it. Like, I became sexually active after I left the church. So I don't have an experience of, I didn't struggle with I didn't start having which is the common experience, is that you do start having sex because statistically speaking, you start having sex when you're still religious. Abstinence culture, despite having my little, I always like to show it off, but despite having my little purity pledge card, spoiler alert, this didn't work. So, didn't work. We know that statistically speaking, human beings are going to have sex with each other. And if you're in abstinence, purity, patriarchal culture, you just delay it by a certain amount of time, and then you have sex without protection. I did not become sexually active until I was in college, and I had already walked away from the faith. So my own sex for my own life was not a religious experience. The only time I could say that it is that the first time I was sexually aroused, I was still a very deeply religious person. It was a transformative, life-changing, profound traumatic experience for me. And again, deals with mom. We were in a bookstore and I was always allowed to get books. I was always allowed to buy them. We grew up with a robust library, and I was in the clearance section, and one of the books in the clearance section was some like Playboy tips and tricks, which don't even get me started on like, oh, Playboy is like a feminist masterpiece because they allow women to be sexy. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about, but that's another story. So I was reading through this book and like tucked in the corner, subversively looking at it. I think I was, I don't know, 12 or 13. And it was just a description about clitoris stimulation techniques. And for the first time I was like, oh my God, what is happening to me? What is happening to my body? What are these feelings? I'm like, my heart rate is racing. I was aroused for the first time and also panicking. And I remember like mom came around the corner, like shoving it back on the shelf, like, don't let her see, don't let her see. Not that, I mean, I didn't know at the time, like, mom would not have been shitty to me about it, but like, you just, you know that it's bad somehow. And I remember we were at home and I was in my room and I was in a blind panic because I was physically aroused, like my heart rate's up, my body's hot. And I felt so bad about it. I felt so guilty about it that I went and got like a cold, like I got like ice water and held a washcloth of ice water to my vulva because I felt so terrible about being aroused. Now, I will say this, proud of me, that guilt lasted all of like one day because like I started masturbating pretty quickly after that. So go me. I did was like, you know what? God doesn't care. He didn't intervene during the Holocaust. He's not going to care if I masturbate. So I like didn't, because it was right around that time we were learning about these concepts. So I didn't. So my sex life now, of course, is wonderful. I'm a polyamorous and I'm in the kink community. So I have orgies and sex parties and dungeon play and all these wonderful partners that are fulfilling. And I have sex with women and men and everybody in between. And again, do what I want. And it's been incredible to not be controlled by a morality around my morality for my sexuality is based on people and their identity and not some bullshit cosmic idea of what's right and what's wrong that's always based in misogynistic ideas.
I
So mine,
love
it was kind
that.
of funny. Because again, when you're Mormon, you're taught you do not date until you're 16, and they like to couch it in the whole "you're not mature enough," which is hysterical because I was in 6th grade the first time a boy asked me to go out with him. Um, so yeah, it's kind of awkward when you're younger and be like, oh, I'm not dating until I'm 16, and you're proud of yourself the whole time, and you're like, okay, okay, I haven't done it, I haven't. You turn 16, you're like, sweet. Now when they ask me, I can say yes, and then nobody asks you. So the first boyfriend I had, it took a while for him to convince me, also because we were friends, also because he was not one of the good Mormon boys. But that was one of the funniest parts of it. He was chemo brain and is kicking in. It wasn't Mormon, but it was definitely one of the Christian sects. Uh, and he was the first one to really like get me started on deconstructing sexuality, even though I didn't see that as a deconstruction back then. But the really funny part is because we were both in this world of purity culture, it was touch, it was kiss, that's it. Nothing like below the waist. Um, touch my boobs, like there was like I was top naked. That was it. And even then, it was just me and him. It was very exclusive uh, for a long time. And so I didn't even have even later, like he went with me to Arizona. And even then, I'm outside of the state. I'm away from the Mormon bubble. And even then, there's no actual sex. Like there's nothing going on. And when people are asking us like, "Oh, how are you doing that?" "Oh, we just know like how to stop and where each other likes to be touched and that's it." We didn't even think there was anything beyond that. I certainly didn't. And like when it came to the whole idea of orgasms, that didn't happen until I was almost 21. Like it blows my mind that there's all of this that's associated with it. And even then, I still was outside of Utah. In the back of my mind, there's still that shame. There's still that whole, like, I'm no longer a virgin. None of these guys are temple worthy. And that stuck with me through the time I was an adult. Uh, and it's only recently, the last, about what, 10 years? Not even 10 years, that I've started to let go of that guilt and started to deconstruct that part. But when it comes to the patriarchal effect on relationships and that changing, that part goes far beyond just me because I've with learning about the history of Mormonism, I've been learning how far my family goes into it. I've always heard we're one of the pioneer families. Uh, we were one of the big deals. Like there's a constant ancestor who's brought up all the time. Um, and then I come to find out that there's another ancestor. I believe it's one of his brothers who had multiple wives. As far as I know, he had at least two that I found documentation. Um, and so the more I break away from the religion, the more I'm understanding the role that my family historically and currently continue to play with the damage that these patriarchal roles have built from the beginning. Um, and like it, you get into the polygamy part, and it's ugly.
It's so
There's
ugly. And Steph, I
It's
love that you
not
brought
just
up,
sex trade, it's
oh
sex
yeah.
trafficking.
Yes. And I
Um,
love that you brought up, you said a very specific word that we haven't really spoken about, as that's one of the most foundationally important topics to talk about misogyny and patriarchy in religion, which is the word virgin and the concept of virginity with women in pretty much all faiths, especially all Abrahamic faiths. It is your sole value as a woman is your virginity, and it is a thing for you to protect and own, and it is what gives you value. And once you cross the Rubicon, once you let a penis enter your vagina, it is fucking over for you. Like your value, you are fundamentally changed as a person. Nobody's gonna want you. No, and purity culture, when it comes to its harmful effects on women. Again, I didn't become sexually active until after I'd already left the faith. And the first time I had sex at 19, I remember thinking like, I called mom right after because we were already kind of like out of the faith. I called mom right. I was like, I mean, it was okay. It was okay. I mean, yeah, it was, I like the guy. He's hot. Like it was on an awkward, uncomfortable couch. So it wasn't like that great of a time, but like, I don't feel fundamentally changed as a person. So just add that to the list of one of the things that I was lied to in the church. And you think about even when and I'm seeing this in the chat of guilt and shame of even when you've deconstructed these religions that women still have such profound guilt and shame for having a sex drive or lack thereof, and their value with their virginal value, I'm saying it wrong, value within the faith on it is just made extremely explicitly clear to you that that is the most important thing you can. I mean, the concept of the Virgin Mary. I mean, there's a reason why books have been written about this, of this obsession with controlling women's sexuality, and it's kind of why actually faith was invented in the first place. If we're really going to get into like the anthropological study of why was religion invented in the first place,
To control
to
women.
control women and their sexuality.
Yay!
Yes. And because,
Yes.
and Daryl, Dr. Ray can talk about this a bit like later, and he's talked about this before. Like, obviously, like you're always going to know who the mother is because there's a pregnancy and a resulting child. But how are you going to know who the father is unless you have a system of essentially enslavement and control of women that they don't have access to any other bodies that could possibly provide a child. So if you prevent women from being able to have any other sexual partners, that means you know that the child they created was yours. And it's literally why faith was created in the first place, was to control women.
And in
Yeah.
matriarchal cultures, guess what? It doesn't matter who the father is. What would happen if you didn't know who the father of a child was? Well, if the father of the child doesn't control your social and economic and spiritual life, it kind of doesn't matter.
Which also,
Yeah.
speaking of the father controlling, thank fuck, I did go through multiple purity culture, like purity abstinence only courses. I never did one of those daddy daughter balls where they like, you dress in white and you like marry your father and give him your virginity so that he can like symbolically hold on to it for your husband. Like, like, excuse me while I vomit, which is a real thing. Just so you know, if anyone isn't
Yeah.
aware, that is a actual ongoing practice in evangelical Christianity, is the father-daughter balls, where they have a big party and the girls get put in these big white dresses, and you have these little marriages with your father where he symbolically takes your virginity and keeps it till you're ready to give it to your husband.
Yeah.
I will
Like
never
my
forget
own
the first time we mentioned the term purity balls on here. It was an episode where Eric Wells was still with us, and he had never heard the term before. I mean, he's still alive. He was just still hosting the show, and he was like, "Purity balls? Is that like? Do you have to shave them or something? Like, what is that?" I died.
my origin story is actually tied. You can't separate it from the whole, you know who the mother is and she gets all the blame, and oh, she's also the one seducing the guy and all of this. So yeah, I had to, one of the things that I've had to confront is the way that my family still takes part in that. uh like it's absolutely crazy because of course with Mormonism, they're infamous for polygamy. It's no longer practiced the exact same as it was in the last half of the 1800s. Of the mainstream Salt Lake City version, I know we've got some that are familiar with the fundamental LDS, which is like OG Mormonism. If you want to know what it was really like, that's the actual, that's the real Mormon church. The one that I'm with is just the corporate cosplaying nonsense that tried to, just it's crazy. Uh, but I've uh, I've found at least one family member, um, who, yeah, he had two wives. I never learned about him. We heard about the other guy all the time. But this one who had two wives, it turns out he's even more famous. He started the Deseret newspaper. He was one of the guys, like, he worked underneath the guy who started Deseret on the newspaper, and within a few years took it over himself until he died. He's the one that checked every single not article, well, article too, but like every single issue before signing off on it getting distributed. He's a bigger deal, but I never heard about him, which really ticks me off because I wanted to be the journalist. And that should have been a big, oh, that runs in our family, but that wasn't pushed near as much as the artistic family members, which, I've got some, but I can't draw to save my life. And then you go even more current. One of my current relatives, like current, I think, yeah, he's still alive, is one of the most known apologists for the church. Especially his specialty is like original Mormonism and polygamy and Joseph Smith times and all of that. And I hate being related to him now that I know all of the truth, because now I have to see through his nonsense. Um, when I was a little kid, I met one of the 12 apostles who is a family member. Like
Wait, I'm
all
sorry,
of my
what?
cousins. Okay,
Wait,
so again,
unpack this for
Mormonism,
me.
which part? The
Uh,
part where I was the 12 apostle thing? Yeah.
yes.
Um, yeah, when Joe set up the church, one of the things that he did when he would get this idea that his power was being threatened, he would come up with a new revelation that said, "Oh, there's this new level. I get that new level. You guys are still powerful, but you're this level right below me." And so eventually he had the idea of the presidency where he's the big guy, the president of the church. He has two counselors, and then there are 12 apostles. Just exactly where he got the name from is where he based it off of because ego.
Got it.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, that continued into modern day. And so at one point, up until he died in 2017, one of my family members was in charge. Like he was one of the 15 top powerful men of the church. And so, and I still have like current other family who they continue to influence how the church operates. And so I can't ignore it. That's another reason like I get asked, "Well, why don't you just let it go? Why can't you just leave the church alone already?" I know it drives my husband crazy. He just rolls his eyes. Um so
But it's still impacting you,
yeah, I
years
can't
yeah.
step away from it because until my family gets out of it, I can't ignore the way that the church has been justifying the abuse that happens in my family. I don't know how much it's continued with my cousins and their kids, but I know that it's was happening when we were kids and our parents, and I don't know how far back it goes. But I've been learning that abuse is justified in the way the church runs, the doctor, and all of that. So a lot of it is from the patriarchal systems. Uh, like I said, including my own origin story, but that's Jerry Springer, and we need a whole other RfR episode to go into that.
And we will.
I
So
will
look
warn my
forward to
mom.
that, folks. I did want to mention kind of following on what everyone kind of talked about, this idea of like shaming and purity and virginity, and a lot of people in the chat have mentioned, kind of being shamed or made to feel guilty about their sexuality. There's a book about this. It's actually by someone who is still, I believe, in the Christian faith, but they came from a more fundamentalist evangelical background that they have since left, called Pure, by Linda K. Klein, that describes the experiences of a lot of people who she went back and interviewed years later that had been a part of her church youth group that did a lot of this abstinence only kind of purity ball stuff, and then followed up with them years or decades later, and sort of chronicled some of their experiences of shame and extreme anxiety and trauma surrounding their first and subsequent sexual experiences. So if anyone is feeling like, oh, I'm a total weirdo, I'm having these weird feelings around sex, well, first of all, no, you're not. This was something that was done to you, and if you want to ever kind of feel like, okay, I'm actually not the only person who has experienced this, go read that book. It's called Pure, and you are not alone, and it's not your fault that you were indoctrinated to feel super weird about your body and your sexuality, because that is not a problem with you, that is a problem with what people told you. And okay, we've got time for, I think, one more quick round of comments. I want us to kind of end on thinking about what we can do for other people who have been through this. And I would love to hear from y'all about, how do you think that secular women, or women who have left religion, or a religion in any case, what can they do to empower one another and kind of resist the lingering patriarchal values that still are with us in society at large, and still may be lingering in our own minds and unexamined assumptions? What can we do to support other women, and do you have any examples of role models that you would look to?
Oh, great question. It's going to surprise and shock everybody to hear me say that one of the things that you can do is become involved with RfR. This is, of course, we have people from all across the spectrum come to RfR, but if you ever wanted to be selective about who you're supporting or who you're working with, we have some gender specific support groups. We have scads of opportunities for you to be able to do that. And this, I've talked about this before, not necessarily in the context of supporting women and coming out of the patriarchy, but just the process itself. There is not much more gratifying, especially if you have been through and you know the journey, you know the sensations, you know the milestones, you know the feelings, to be able to accompany someone, even at a distance, on their journey out of this. I keep overusing the word gratifying, but maybe they don't have to struggle like you and I did. Maybe it won't take them quite so long. Maybe it won't all come to to them quite as a shock as it did to the rest of us, and they won't have to unpack through the years. Recovering from religion kind of covers all those bases. We have the resources, we have the support groups, we have the one-on-one with a helpline agent, we have our weekend religion recovery retreat that's coming up. There are so many opportunities that you can be involved in, and being in helping someone along, paying it forward, so to speak. I always shamelessly steal the title of that movie, paying it forward, being grateful to those who have behind you, but instead of putting all your energy into being grateful to those who have led the way in front of you, you reach behind and you offer a hand to those coming behind you. So that I'm going to use that as my entire answer on how we can support one another, and how don't minimize how important it will be to you on your own personal journey to help someone else in their journey. Yes, it's incredibly important to them, and you can play that role, but what it does for you on the inside has value far beyond what we normally talk about. We talk about how great it is to help to watch someone make that, but what it does to you inside, especially if you struggled, especially if you know that struggle is, we talk about deconstruction being a lifetime journey. There is not much that's going to help you further along in your own journey than reaching and helping someone else.
Yes, I first of all love all of that. I'm echoing all of that. My advice and how I feel would be the best, what I want to say to both women and men, and everyone across the gender spectrum. For me, this is more for women. Deconstructing and getting rid of my internalized misogyny was the single most powerful thing that I did to uh, be more supportive of myself and women in general. I had a lot of internalized misogyny. I hated the color pink because pink was a feminine color, and feminine meant stupid. Feminine meant dumb. Being a woman meant you were ditzy and shallow and stupid. And I was none of those things, so therefore I hated the color pink. There's a lot of that internalized. When it's women, it's internalized, right? Like that's why we use the phrase internalized misogyny. And when I uh, moved to Vegas and I became a full-time entertainer, I was thrust in like every Thursday through Sunday for years. I was in a dressing room for 6 to 8 hours a night with, anywhere from 5 to 20 other women of all different walks of life. And it was one of the single greatest experiences of my journey on this planet, of just being exposed to different women from different backgrounds, and realizing like, wow, there's so much internal hatred that I have about women and femininity and these female concepts, because I was raised, because again, we are raised that women are stupid, we're shallow, we're less than, like and those are misogynistic concepts that you are ingrained with from infancy. And it takes fucking work to get rid of those ideas. One of the best things I can, I feel like one of the most helpful things to do is literally just start listening to women. And when I say listen to women, I need you to not just listen to like privileged, educated white women. I need you to follow content creators who are women of color and women from various backgrounds and trans women. And you need to, and just start following them. Like keep them on your Blue Sky, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, whatever you have on your social media feed, and just passively, you don't have to engage right away. You don't have to like debate Reno in the comments. Just start consuming content made by women and listening to their stories and reading more about their lives. Like when I first learned, and I feel dumb that I can't, haha, dumb. I feel dumb that I can't remember if it's Bechtel or Bechtel. How do we pronounce that word? Is it
I
Bechtel or Bechtel?
think it's Bechtel.
Okay, so Bechtel. Like for example, when I learned about the Bechtel test, it kind of changed my life. And for those who don't know, the Bechtel test, it's not saying that if a film passes or fails the Bechdel test, if it passes, it means it's a feminist masterpiece, and if it fails, it means it's derivative bullshit. That is not what it's saying. It's just something to keep in mind. But the Bechdel test is where at any point during a movie, two women have to have a conversation with each other. And the conversation can be about shopping and chocolate and shoes and dresses and periods, but it cannot be about a man. It can be about any of those other female concepts, but it can't be about a man. And you would be pretty goddamn surprised on just how many movies pass that test and don't pass that test. Like the vast majority of films do not. And that's just perspective for you to have on how much are we actually listening to women? How much are we centering women for their own individuality and not as supporting characters for men and subservient characters for men? So yes, I consume content made by women, watch movies and follow YouTube channels. I can start putting some in the comments of just some incredible feminist YouTubers that I really enjoy to just start watching their content. Just start doing that.
I love that answer and I love that test. It is wild to me how many films do not pass this test and how many people fail or have failed in the past to recognize that, or two, realize that that's kind of weird and kind of a problem that there's no one in this film that isn't a man that isn't talking about men. uh, Basically the idea being that if a film fails the Bechdel test, basically women are not doing anything to advance the plot in this film other than as tools to prop up the male
Right. Like
characters.
the women in refrigerators, which is a very
Yeah,
common, if you don't know women in refrigerators, it's the concept in media where if a woman in a film dies to advance it makes the man angry and therefore he's going to go on a vengeance spree because this woman that he knew, that he had feelings for, like it's from a comic where a love interest was killed and then shoved in a refrigerator. So women in refrigerators is the concept of the death of a female character to advance the plot of the male protagonist or whatever. And it's a very, 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 and I'm again, this is not saying that if a film or a piece of media follows those tropes, it therefore is not feminist or therefore is bad. That is not what it's saying. It is just something to start rolling around in your brain of considering the how women are portrayed, the perception of women.
And
yes.
that's why John Wick is not one of those movies. Yes, his wife dies. And okay, it is a trope that yes, she dies from some unspecified illness. However, he goes on a spree because someone killed his dog. That's why it got, that's why it's fun for me to watch because I got to pet those dogs. Like I will go, I'll get attached to animals much faster than any human being. So, and they're
That
so
is also
freaking
the reason
cool.
I can never watch that movie again, because of the scene where his puppy dies. I will never
Yes,
again watch that movie or any of the sequels. And people have even told me, no, it's okay. The dog doesn't die in the sequel. I don't care.
the
I
dog is not
remember
in
it
the
happening.
sequel.
I
He
am
has, yeah.
traumatized. I won't watch it.
Oh, okay. I should clarify. It's not the same dog in the sequel, but he's
Wait,
still a really good boy.
I
The
mean,
dog in the sequel is a very good boy.
I believe that all dogs are good dogs.
For me, it's a little bit different uh, because I've always been more of a tomboy. Organic connections with the other girls when I was a kid were rare, um, which is why when I was a teenager, the young women's programs grouping was really valuable to me because it was the first time I was connecting more with my peers. But even still, like the more I started to break away from my my expected roles and rules, the more I was now becoming one of the bad influences, and it became a whole thing. But so for a lot of women, I know when you're leaving a particular religion, finding other women who have also left that particular religion is very helpful. You do speak the same language. You do understand the same rules of the game and all of that. Um, but for me, I have made so much progress ever since I did find RfR. Gail is absolutely right. There have been a lot of other great resources. Um, there was one podcast that I learned of before RfR, and it was cool. But again, just like I didn't become part of the Relief Society when I was a young woman, young adult, I just didn't connect with a lot of it as well. I connected a lot with the teenage stuff that was mentioned, but beyond that, I just wasn't as chemo brain is kicking in. All I could think of is dipping something into the water. Like I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid as much for the Relief Society end. So I missed out on a lot of that, but I also thankfully dodged a lot of those bullets. So for me, it's been more of I've connected with other groups of people like the LGBT community and the impact that patriarchal systems has had on them. For example, with gay men, you are not supposed to be with another man, period. Like you were supposed to have power over women. Just so breaking even that rule. And then same thing with every other group in there. If you are trans, you are destroying that system. And kudos if you are trans and still like it that's power. That's a way you break the system is you are genuine to yourself as much as you can be. So if it's safe, keep throwing up that middle finger of just being you. Like that's that's amazing. So yeah, other groups that have been hurt by this system and by these religions are the ones that I've been drawn to the most. And I learn more about their experiences, they learn more about mine, and we come to find ways of like the Bechtel test. Someone pointed that out in one of the times that it was way before RfR, but it was not a group of other Mormon or ex-Mormon women. It was, I think, in one of the little groups where it was a LGBT uh, class that they were holding for these youth, and just a way of helping them learn all of these things they might have been missing because they were so just struggling to survive. Uh,
Yeah,
just
that's
things like that have been helpful. And then I find RfR, and a lot of people they find RfR, and then for a while it helps, and then they move on. But it's been almost 3 years for me, uh, and I'm finding something new all the time, and the poor people in the hangouts have just been so gracious by letting me go off on. You wouldn't believe what I learned about Joseph Smith this week, like, and but I've built friendships and going through this most recent bout with cancer, I've had 3 days a week where it stabilizes me on understanding what point of the calendar I'm at. And it's, yeah, RFR has been the most helpful factor yet. And it's, I can't, I can't give it
oh.
enough credit.
And
Um,
we
so
didn't
yeah.
even pay Steph to say that. That came up
Right?
organic.
I'll get all the good RFR money too later.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be later. Shh. But no, you make such a good point though that, we community, yes, that is the thing. And that community includes all of us. We're all empowering one another by standing up for one another. So thank you for pointing that out. And we have got to go to questions because we are almost at time, and we're just here chatting and having a great time. But we do have to stay somewhat on a schedule here, so we're going to do a couple of questions, and then we're going to go to the hangout and we're going to keep talking. So let's do that. Thank you all for sharing your insights. This has been amazing, as I knew it would be. I could not wait. We could talk for several more hours, but we're not going to record that. We're going to wrap up the show and go to the hangout. But thank you for all of your comments. And now, y'all in the audience, don't let me forget to share the poll results before we leave. But first, let's do a couple of questions. And the first question I'll field first. Someone asked, what are your thoughts on the inclusion or exclusion of transgender women in both women's spaces and the broader definition of womanhood itself, particularly during Women's History Month? And why do you hold that perspective? And I'm just gonna say we do include transgender women in our women's spaces. We have our online support groups, our online community and our support groups that are for women. Those are inclusive of trans women. That is during Women's History Month and every month. We also have spaces for LGBTQ plus folks as well, if that feels more comfortable, but trans women can go in our women's groups and trans men can go in our men's groups. That is our policy on that, because we're not awful people. That's the why. But Gail, if you want to mention any more about that, feel free.
I just want to say, if if this is an area, if you're new in your deconstruction, sometimes we get stuck in some places. And of course, it all wraps around sexuality and sexual expression and all those things. It's okay. It's where you are in your journey. We had a guest last week, Dr. Stephen Novella from The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, who gave us a presentation that was incredible. You are probably aware enough, no matter where you are in your journey, to understand there's a difference between sex and gender. And Dr. Novella addressed the sexual piece of it and why this binary concept, there are only two genders or two sexes. There is so much more to this. It might be helpful for you to listen to that. It might be in our podcast spaces. It takes a little bit longer for it to get into YouTube spaces, but that might be helpful to you. But Kara did a very good job. They expressed clearly that RfR is a place of inclusion. And so we welcome anyone across the spectrum, and including our trans brothers and sisters. And so enough said about that.
Yeah. So that was a great question, and yeah, great reference. That was our episode last week, and that will be up in a few weeks online. So look forward to that one. Okay,
I would like to speak a
yeah,
little on that
go
one.
ahead.
That was a big part of the final reason on why I stopped attending. End of 2015. I mentioned it in uh, my personal RfR talk, uh, but they still, to this day, the Mormon Church does not acknowledge anything. Sex and gender are the same concept for them. And yeah, end of 2015, it was to the point where they declared you apostate if you had children and were trans. It got ugly. It's one of the things that gets me bit spicy. So I'm gonna hold off on that part, but it made me leave as far as attendance go. There are just some times where there's a line, and back then I was trying to stay, thinking I was one of those people, I wanted to change the church from the inside. And it was at that point I realized I can't do that, because the people in charge were making that their line, and I was not that wasn't something I could change anymore. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to just help outside of it. If you are at a point where you're able to stay, if you are at a point where it's just a culture thing for you, speak up when you can. Make sure that people know that you are a safe person. And if it's not safe for you to speak up, find places where it is. Uh, if you're able to, like, it's so easy to create like a Discord channel and just invite these people, come hang out with me on Discord for like a few hours a week. Uh, just whatever time and energy you feel you have extra, use it for good, basically. And But yeah, if you have to, draw a line and then let that anger fuel you into doing something. Because if you're trying to stay and you get that angry, that was the beauty of it. I was no longer afraid of getting in trouble for speaking up. I no longer was afraid of getting sent to the bishop's office after church. So I could say whatever I want about the church and trans people and how it's messed up on what they're doing. It's really freeing. Uh,
Yeah, it is. And yeah, you make a good point. I was kind of flippant earlier when I said, well, the reason why is because we're not awful people. But to your point, a lot of people come to recovering from religion because they may be a member of the LGBTQ plus community or an ally, or they have a person in their life that they care about who has been treated really badly because of that, and they come here looking for a safe space to recover. And so, of course, we try to provide that safe space. And we have a saying that used to be on the background that the previous host of this show, Eric, would always have, that said, "People are more important than beliefs," and we do stand by that. And people are important here, and that includes trans people and non-binary people and cisgender people. Everyone's important here, and you can go to the group that serves you. So, and with that, let's see, we are about at the end of time, but we did have one more question that might be interesting to explore, and then we'll go to the hangout. So the question was, some people say that sexism doesn't exist anymore. One, how do you respond to that? That's the first part. And the second part was, hold on, I lost it. I had it here a second ago. Yeah, what advice do you give to people who are still struggling with some of that internalized sexism because of the indoctrination that they got, and maybe they don't believe it anymore, but it is still affecting them? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, the people who say sexism isn't real or sexism isn't something that affects women anymore. The easiest, I've said this before, the easiest metric that I use, that I feel like people should use to measure sexism, is it's a very simple concept, and it's body hair on women. And what is the response to because what is the difference between when masculine people have body hair and feminine people have body hair? Is there a negative reaction when feminine people have body hair? Of course, the answer is fucking yes. Like, I grew out my armpit hair for a while during the pandemic, and my leg hair, because, I didn't feel like shaving. And the response for people who are femme presenting to be in public space with body hair, as you can imagine, is, that's so gross, that's unhygienic. Like, I mean, I don't want you to read the comment section on anything where it shows a feminine person with body hair, because self-care is not reading the comments. But that just shows you of how far we have to go, because it doesn't harm anyone. It's not unhygienic. It doesn't affect anyone. And yet we still have this attitude about women and having body hair. So as far as sexism, and of course, in the rising tide of fascism and Project 2025, we have now very, very clear institutionalized rules. A woman was just jailed literally last week in Georgia for having a miscarriage. Jailed because she disposed of the miscarriage in an improper way, but she's jailed for having a miscarriage. That's institutionalized sexism. But
Yeah.
I also want to say to people who, like, what do you say to people who say sexism isn't real? That is such a myopic, shitty, dumb, dipshit viewpoint, that I give you permission to not waste your time. If you don't feel like you've got the energy to argue with somebody who makes such a myopic claim, then don't. I don't have to, it's like trying to explain to the world, like arguing the flat earther. You don't have to. You don't have to waste your time if you don't want to. Part of being a out feminist is the amount of people who just like, yeah. And sometimes the greatest good you can do is just continue to be loud, but only engage in these discussions when you feel like there's progress to be made, or you feel like this person is coming to you in good faith. Yeah, the sexism is, and that's just from a Western perspective. If we want to talk about like sexism isn't a problem, like women are still literal property across the world, like actual literal property across the world. FGM is still a massive practice that is very much engaged with today. So it's, yes, that is very much institutionalized sexism. Would y'all like to know what the leading cause of death is for pregnant women in the United States? What's the leading cause of death?
Ooh, tell us.
It's homicide. It's
Uh,
homicide.
let me guess who the suspect usually is. Is it an intimate partner?
And some of this, so the truth will set you free, but first it's really going to fucking piss you off. So a lot of this is data gathering, it's information gathering, reading about these harms that, you know, women go through. Like it's just like really, really shitty, and it sucks, and it's important. So, you know, it can be tough, but yeah, and I'm so sorry, Kara. Can you please tell me the second part of that question? The first part was
Yes.
if sexism is the thing.
Yeah, sorry. The second part was our kind of like hopeful end on a positive note attempt with this episode, which is can you wait a minute. No, where was it? It was hold on. Now I lost it again. Yes. What advice would you give for women who are still struggling with feeling like they're not enough because of some of this internalized indoctrination and misogyny that they may have received?
Boy, I'm glad that question was asked because I saw a Blue Sky tweet today that was just like incredible of I will say this about the current administration. It's vaporized all of my imposter syndrome because if these absolute moron dipshits can be in power and just like drunk text their friends secret war plans, why am I feeling any imposter syndrome? I am enough. Like, god damn it, I am enough. And I'm joking, but really seriously, like imposter syndrome is something I struggle with to a profound level, feeling like you're valuable enough, feeling like you're worthwhile enough. It's not going to be an overnight, it is not going to be an overnight transformation for you, my loves. It's going to be a lifelong journey to get to love yourself. And this applies to everyone on the gender spectrum, deconstructing religion on like to men, you are valuable regardless of how much you can provide. I promise you have value and you are worthwhile, even if you aren't strong enough to like fight a bear or and make six figures a year or are really tall or any of these paradigms of masculinity that are oppressive and toxic and shitty to you when it's put upon you that it says you were not valuable without those things. So please be gentle with yourself. It's okay that it's not an instant thing. It's going to take time. Like check in with yourself in a year. Maybe write down your thoughts now, and then next year, like look at where you've grown and where you are.
I love it. Thank you. And
I've
it's
got
also
one.
okay to choose the
Um,
bear. Yeah, Steph, go ahead.
it's almost it's nowhere near as good as the shaving hair. Although the pink razor thing does tick me off because oh my gosh, I but if you play a lot of video games, check and see what kind of armor you get if you choose to have a female character. Um, it's fascinating. The cool news, my husband's been playing the newest Monster Hunter game, and they finally give you the option to choose any of the versions. Male, female, there's like two of each. Like, so yeah, Fashion Hunter just became a whole other level. It's great. So some of the games, they're catching on. But still, most of them, if you go to the female one, check and see how much fewer protection your character's body gets when you're up against a super insane big bad that you're going to die to 20 times.
It's kind of like the gamer version of the Bechdel test. I love it. All right. Gail, you get the final words here.
Okay, of course, I'm going to come in with a little counterpoint. I absolutely endorse Glenda's position that you don't owe it to anybody to have a conversation about this. Having said that, let me tell you that there is a skill set. It's a skill set that we work with our agents on the helpline with, of trying to give someone, you're going to get burned sometimes, and it's going to be a troll. But if there are moments of opportunities when you can access a little bit of patience and tolerance, and it's something we teach our agents, to give someone the benefit of the doubt when they come in, you don't know where they are on their journey. They don't even know. Sometimes people don't even know that what they're saying is even offensive. There's no such thing as sexism. Sometimes I know it's hard to believe. Sometimes that's straight. That's straight up. They are so deeply indoctrinated into the cult mentality, the religious mentality, that's what they believe. And if we go at them with both barrels, not to make everything about gun imagery, but if we go at them hard and, that's so stupid. And of course there is. And now I'll give you this example. If we give them the benefit of the doubt, give them some space, and first ask some clarifying questions and just start the conversation. What does that word mean to you? What might that mean to you? What would be an example of that? And as I said, if you apply that into your own personal life, you certainly don't have, even those of us who've been practicing that skill for years don't have that and an unlimited abundance of that. But if you can access that little bit of patience so that you give people space to ask a stupid question or to ask a question that to us on this side is outrageous, even though you're going to come across trolls from time to time, probably the majority of the time, there are going to be times when you do make progress and you're able to answer the question. And when you ask those clarifying questions and they explain to you what they think sexism is, and we're so far apart on just what the definition of the word is, and it opens the opportunity to have a discussion about that. Is it rare? Yes, it's rare, but it happens. It happens enough that the helpline is a place that people can come on the very beginning part of their journey before they've discarded any of their bad beliefs and can ask those questions. So keep that in your mind as well. Protect yourself and practice self-care, but keep that in your mind as well.
Love it. Thank you, all of you. This was amazing. I knew it was going to be, and thank you for sharing your insights. And we have gone way over time, so we are going to wrap up and go to Hangout now. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Don't forget to join us next week. We have Mallory Mackey, who will be talking about anthropology through a skeptical eye. When do beliefs become harmful? So, as an anthropologist, I can't wait to hear about that. And don't forget to follow us on line. We have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and of course YouTube, where you can find and connect with us. And feel free to like and subscribe and share and all that so other people can find our services. And if you are looking for another way to get involved and support other folks, don't forget to volunteer. We have found that healing can also come from helping others. We talked about that earlier tonight, and that is the case for a lot of our RfR volunteers. It can really be a good feeling to be able to help other people along with you.
Tara, I am so sorry to interrupt. Again, I was given a wrong time zone. I need to go to my green room now. I have to go do a fundraiser. So I'm so sorry to have to go, but I'm going to try to pop back in after this 15 minutes is done. So please keep talking. I love all of you. I will be back. I will see you in a moment. Okay, bye.
Godspeed. Good luck, Glenda. We'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, Glenda will be back. She is in high demand at her other fundraiser, but yes, like Glenda, volunteer with us. You can also volunteer other places too. It's okay, we don't discriminate. But check out our main page. Go to recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer if you want to get involved. And thank you for reminding me about the poll. Let me share that now, and then we'll go to the Hangout. Unless this is normally the part after the poll where we go to our final RfR moments. So Gail, if you have any final words for us, get to thinking about those. I'm going to share the poll results. So what we asked at the beginning was, did your religious tradition include misogynistic doctrine? 57% of people said yes, explicitly, and 29% of people said yes, but we didn't necessarily say it out loud. 10% of people were not sure, and nobody said no. 4% said not applicable. So, wow. Yeah, I think that kind of says it all. This is a real thing. And the next question was, if you have left a religious tradition, have your views on women or gender roles changed since? A whopping 69% of people said yes, and a lot. 13% of people said yes, a little bit. And only 4% of people said not really, and 7% of people said no. And 7% of people said not applicable. So again, a very large number of people giving the yes a lot and yes a little answers on that one. Now, the next two questions were divided. We said for women and people who were socialized as women, did your religious traditions' views on women and gender roles seem oppressive or coercive to you at the time? 44% of people said yes, 22% said no, and 34% of people said that was not applicable to them or they were not sure. So definitely twice as many people saying yes versus the no's. Then we asked the same question for men and people who were socialized as men. Did your religious traditions' views on women and gender roles seem oppressive or coercive to you at the time? And for this one, 23% of people said yes, 10% said no, and 67% were not sure or not applicable. So a large number of people chose that third option on that one. That may be that we had more women attending this evening, or that it was not an issue that as many men had thought about previously. So interesting. But again, we had about twice as many yeses as there were nos in that case too. So interesting answer. And then finally, your tool of choice for smashing the patriarchy, it looks like biting satire won out with 35%, beating out the next highest answer, which was the flamethrower at 23%. And we did have a few other options that were suggested to us in the chat. So thank you for that. And I will stop sharing that now. And Gail, do you have any final thoughts for us? I know I gave you the final word earlier, so if you want that to be your final word, that's fine, but I want to give you the floor one more time, just in
Thank
case.
you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. What an incredible evening this has been. Thank you for attending, and particularly thank you for being so active in the chat. It was, I wasn't able to look at it as close as I normally do, but it looked like there was a lot of positive conversation. And so I appreciate you attending, but also you participating and speaking with your other attendees and getting the conversation going. I know this is a volatile topic from time to time, especially for those of us who have been brought up in religion. So thank you for sharing those things. I'm going to be quick about this. I'm going to, you can hold me to it. I'm going to mention three things. The first thing is we don't want the day to finish or the meeting to finish without recognizing that today is the Trans Day of Visibility. And to our trans brothers and sisters, we see you, we love you, we embrace you. Please feel welcome at Recovering from Religion. We're open and inclusive here. I also mentioned that Dr. Stephen Novella had given a presentation last week about sex and why it's so difficult for people to embrace. It is a phenomenal talk, but you may have noticed in the chat that we're behind on our podcast spaces. That gives me the opportunity to say, if you have a skill set and you would like to help us with that, you could come in and be a flaming hero for us. If you have that skill set and you have time to volunteer, remember, not everyone has to be an agent on the helpline or a support group director. There are things like this that we need volunteers for. And if you would like to lend your expertise, or if you would just like to learn and have some time to give, we would love to embrace you. Second one, we have a big fundraiser coming up on May the 10th. There's one going on. That's the one Glenda had to pop out to. We do these things from time to time. The secular organizations support one another. We partner with other organizations. Ours is May the 10th. It's all day. You'll find much more detail about that in the days ahead. Watch our social media for that. If you can participate in that, even if you can't, if you don't feel like you can contribute, it is a rollicking good time. It's several hours with some of your favorite folks from the secular universe. So please make a point of putting that on your calendar and being there. And the third thing is, one of the things that we're raising funds for at this upcoming fundraiser is our fall excursion. You hear us talk about it all the time. It's our weekend religion recovery retreat. It's being held in Charlottesville, Virginia this year, September 19th through the 21st. If you can possibly join us, please do. It's a weekend of fellowshipping and good times and talk and silliness and seriousness and delicious food and wonderful fellowship. So keep your eyes open for that as well. That's coming up in September, but that's one of the main things that we fundraise for at our May 10th fundraiser. Thank you again, everybody, for attending and for sharing so much of yourself in the chat. and with our presenters. We really made the conversation go much more deep in the chat than we were able to touch here on the surface. Please stay for the hangout, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.